been in Parker to start with, I think.
So Joe has played a huge part in the success of the Banded Dodgeball project. So I'm lucky, I guess I get to go first in terms of thanking Joe for all of her work and help. I don't have any fancy slides, but I do have, for those of you who don't know what a banded dodger looks like, remember Forrest the bird of the year, right? And I've had no fancy slides too, I had to write down. But the Bering Head, Harenga Lakes, Eastbourne, and of course the airport team, we'd really like to give Jo a special thanks for all the work she's done to help the bird survival, and you have made a big chance. She's always been positive and proactive to help us. She also brims with common sense, which is an unusual trait, so it's great to be in the community, so it always makes sense. Just to give you some of the few examples that she's helped us with, new fencing. So we took over Bering Head 5 years ago. Of course, Jo was just 1 year into it. We got the new fencing, the signage organized there. During COVID, she organized the permanent fencing at Cahinga Period, which protects both the dodgeball nesting area as well as the ground plants, which is fantastic. She merged all of our signage, so instead of Hut City, Greater Wellington, Taranaki, Canoe, whatever, we all have one signage set now, which is great, saves a bit of money. Of course, Greater Wellington's paying for it, but that's okay. Sorry, you're leaving, right? She installed the cattle stops, got the battery fencing with all the neighbors, including the new park, thereby removing stock. And the stock, we've had a few nests actually destroyed by stock walking on the nest, so by putting all that in and taking the stock out of Bering Head, it's stopped all that kind of a threat. In terms of public engagement, she's been fantastic motivator, instructor, when we host people like the Scouts in the school out there. But the best thing she's accomplished for us, to be honest, is she's softly, over 2 years, got us permission to access, to take care of lodge land. And that is where the birds out there, it's quite an important nesting area, but it's also where, it's the only area of Wellington where they stay year-round. So it's quite a critical area for us to be monitoring. So it's fantastic to be able to get access. And that's continued on with the new owners to do that. Saying that, don't underestimate her, because she's a very good politician. But one day I was with you at Bering Head, there was 4 lads fishing with a truck. They're not allowed to. These guys were like, so Jo just, you got to get out of here. So she has both the good diplomatic skills as well, and she's not afraid to take something on seriously. So again, for the Dodger team, a big, huge thank you for all the efforts and everything you've done for us. And keep your eyes out for dodgers down in that keyway. Hopefully.
Yep, it's you.
Right, so that was the dodgeball contribution, which is really just part of more than 6 years' work. I think probably your first Nero meeting, which was around April 6 years ago, sort of sitting in introductions and whatever, and immediately starts talking about Lakes planting plan. Of course, you've got to get plants in the ground. What, by about July or August, you want to start planting. Here she was in April, new to the job, and already plans afoot to get planting started for that season. This was quite a tight time frame that year. And that, of course, as mentioned before, evolved into challenging the idea of plot after plot after plot, and how that evolves, and sort of I mentioned this earlier, and then the freedom planting, and now also, as I mentioned, the fire protection, which is another new issue. So, but the thing about the freedom planting, if you've got sheep, and as well as fallow deer and goats and cattle beasts, the plants don't do very well. They seem to look right, and so a key thing was getting the stock out, as Parker mentioned. And Jo immediately, within quite quickly, came up with the idea, because I mean, people have been trying to fix these problems for years and have made absolutely no progress. And as Parker mentioned, 2 new cattle stops went in, which stopped sheep coming down the road and coming into the park. And then the other thing was to divide the lakes into 3 blocks and try and tick off one at a time, so you solve a manageable area quite quickly, and then you move on to the next area and the next area, and of course you pick the easiest one first. So within, I think it was within a couple of years, 2/3 of the lakes were essentially stock free, not completely, but way, way better than they've been for years and years and years before. And then I guess it took longer to get the last, but I guess the last sort of the last bit of the puzzle, if you like, was the agreement struck with the lakes, with the Pincarrow Lodge, to actually finish that last bit of boundary fence. So now at last it's all essentially secure. Wasn't easy at times. I mean, there's still sheep running around not that long ago, but it's just so much better. And believe it or not, at one stage there were 3 cattle beasts which were really quite dangerous to deal with. And it seems that a helicopter was brought in to chase them out. So that was pretty extreme and effective. Not sure they were shot, I think they were chased out. Because if you shoot them, you've got a bit of a disposal problem. Yeah, so that was really persistence. We've got a number of categories here we can go through, but yeah, enormous persistence over the years to make that happen. Whereas prior to that, we've really got nowhere. Yeah, I've mentioned the evolution in planting. So the first thing was persistence in the way that the tree planting things I called innovative. Also, another thing she said at the very first meeting she was at was, do we need some more deer money for deer cover? Because we'd really struggled with the deer population in the northern forest. Many of you were seeing the increased browsing throughout in many parts of the forest. Some areas are okay, other areas are really bad. So soon after, she successfully lobbied for a big increase in the deer culling budget. So often now, cullers were going twice a year, not just once a year. But another big step forward was getting the money for scat collection on something like 100 or 200 metre grid across the whole northern forest. And from that, by some DNA magic, you can determine the deer population, which turned out to be 53. And I've forgotten the gender breakdown, but you obviously know that as well from the DNA. And then the plan was developed to try and reduce 53 down to 20 over 5 years, which sounds a bit slow, but the problem with 53 deer, if half of them are female and the reproduction rate's reasonably high, you're adding, I don't know, 15 or 20 deer a year, so you've got to be taking out more than that per year, probably 12 to 15, let's say, to make any progress at all. I think the target was 20, and that was often met by the colours to now. And so this was a 5-year plan. I think we've got 2 years to run before we reassess that plan, and maybe another scat analysis. So I'm not sure that we're there yet in terms of getting the numbers down, but we're way ahead of where we were before, where we were making no progress at all. So yeah, we'd label that as persuasive, let's say. Then came COVID, which immediately nationally put a halt to all trapping activity for the first lockdown. And then when we emerged from that and COVID protocols were brought in, there was a lot of paperwork and procedure to develop and put into effect. And so Joe was required to have, in some ways, face-to-face meetings with all trappers if they were to go out when we were subject to COVID. And so that was 3 big Zoom meetings, I think, and then follow-up one-on-one meetings to pick up stragglers, to tick off this list of 50 plus trappers who had to be involved. So we'd call that thorough. I've mentioned earlier the radio link traps. There's a bit of a byline there in terms of, for Oliver's project, he built a LoRaWAN gateway. Basically, If you put it up on a high ridge, it could see a cell phone tower, so you could get the signal out, and a broadcast of radio coverage of Gollans was the plan. So this was sort of raised as what we wanted to do, and people undenied, and eventually, I guess, somewhere within GW, people realised that you would actually need a licence to put a transmitter in a park, which is fair enough, because cell phone companies might be very keen to do that, and this is kind of an equivalent, but much, much smaller. And so time went on, and that evolved to be a special, smaller version of the licence agreement. We thought, oh, that's good, but that took some time to develop. It didn't look that small to me, but never mind, we finally got there. So the licence was finally granted, and within, I think, a week or two, Oliver had organised things and the gateway went in, and it's been working really well since. But from woe to go, that was 18 months to get that done. So we'd call that patient. And yeah, so they're really the qualities: persistent, innovative, persuasive, thorough, patient. Oh no, there's another slide. Supportive. The HEM team, this is a Jobs for Nature project, was mooted post-COVID, a few years after that, limited period of funding, and Joe immediately supported them in terms of how they could be used with tracking. They worked a little bit in the nursery, set up their own nursery, and then and there was excellent training for young people. And because they were limited duration projects, so eventually the funding stopped. But actually Joe has found ways to support some of their activities ongoing, found budget to do that. So we categorise that as supportive. And then there's a range of stuff under the heading organised. So if you've ever been to a lakes planting day, you know that you end up going out, first you have to deal with what the weather's going to be like. You go out in your vehicles and there's a big trailer full of all this stuff. And you get out there and everything's organised. Some stuff's there already, everything you need is on the trailer, gloves, digging tools, whatever. It's all perfectly organised. When there's a big planting day, like the iwi planting day, it's a whole lot of people to organise. They're all briefed how to do it, and it all happens. And this is time and again. Every winter for 6 years, those days have been beautifully organised. The summer barbecue, for those that have attended, that's I guess it's a much easier thing to do, or even tonight in terms of food organisation, but the barbecue thing is just like clockwork. AGM support, I mentioned that, and we did for a while have East Harbour Regional Park open days. We had Miro volunteers and other volunteers would be at certain places, and people would come through and all work like clockwork. There's a reason for that, because someone is very good at organising. Yeah. So thank you, Joe. It's been a massive contribution in many different ways, and your new employer is very lucky to have you. Thank you.
Okay, I might have to marry you because I didn't even get flowers at my wedding. So thank you. I mean, woo! Yeah. So I do need to say a few things. I'm going to fire all those words right back at you, Terry, because organised, innovative, passionate, and I want to say it's been an absolute pleasure working with Miro, and you as a chair over the last 6 years. I really appreciated it. The role of a park ranger and working with community is a double-edged sword. Your edge is the sharp side of it. It's been an absolute pleasure working with you guys. The amount of work that you get done is incredible. There are other groups that I work with are on the other side of that double-edged sword, and they're really hard work. But Miro is an absolute joy, and it's been an absolute joy, and I look forward to coming to the meetings. That's not always true. Other groups. But I actually do have a little thank you for you, specifically Terry, because you know it takes a team. So thank you for your leadership. And thanks for reminding me of some of the things that I'd forgotten I'd done. Because right now I'm in the process of writing my handover notes. And the list of jobs I haven't finished, I was trying to cross the T's and dot the I's, a bit like my planting days, and I was hoping that there wasn't going to be a long list of things I haven't achieved, but there is a long list of things I haven't achieved. And on that note, I'm going to introduce you to Zane. If you haven't met Zane, Zane is our mobile ranger at the moment between East Harbour and Kaitoki, and tomorrow he's going to be reading the long list of jobs I have. But you know, whatever happens with the new role and my successor has been advertised. They have interviewed, so we're hoping that there will be a very small gap between me leaving and someone else coming into this role. I don't know who that's going to be. I keep asking them, but they're just not giving up the information at the moment. But yeah, I really appreciate some of the things you said, Terry, because Anne Parker, I'd forgotten about that fence that I put up in the first year to keep the people off the doctoral nests, and you're right about the changes in the planting programme. And the removal of the stock. I mean, if people ask me what is the thing I'm most proud of, there's two things I'm most proud of. And getting rid of those stock. When I started in this role, I could not believe at the lakes that I was looking at cows. I remember the first freedom plants I planted up on the top of Cameron Ridge, and there were 3 cows looking at me. And I went, oh no! I know, and I'm building this little barrier around it, and I'm thinking, I've got to get rid of you, otherwise this isn't going to survive. So, I also wanted to say something about Gollans. I'm so excited about Gollans. And if I lived in Eastbourne, I would feel it real hard not to walk in there. But from a ranger's point of view, I beg you not to, because it will only slow the process down. But things like getting on top of the deer, because they come from the south mostly into the northern forest. That's what our DNA scat survey told us, is they will come from the north as well, but they've got a big road to cross. Whereas from the south, there's a beautiful grassy paddock that they're eating every night, and they come from there into the northern forest. The freshwater weeds in Kohanga Tara, we can finally get on top of that. The goats are something that we just haven't been able to solve. You know, they are definitely on the top of the list. And some of those things you will start to see happening. There's another reason not to go in there. It's going to be a bit carnage. You know, the number of goats that are in there, and that needs to be done in a safe and hygienic fashion. And there's a good hazard why we can't go in there. So I am heading to the South Island. I've got a new scary adventure ahead of me. But I've developed a great passion for this area, and be back. So thank you for this, and pizza and fish and chips is ready.